قاعدين في مصر اتكلم انجليزي ليه. I would say my identity is definitely distorted.
ايه الفرق ما بين واحد burnt out وواحد who lost passion؟
Pay attention. Pay attention. But I grew up with a very interesting exposure to Arabic music. What we have right now isn't really representing who we are.
If you had a 1-minute phone call with your 20-year-old self,
If you try to find work-life balance when you're 23, 24, 25, you're going to be working until you're 70.
that's what branding means to you?
If the system isn't working, it doesn't matter what kind of ad you're going to run or what kind of logo you're going to design.
If I was to take one habit from your life or work,
Is this really what I want to be doing for the rest of my life? أنا اسمي عمر هيكل. أنا رئيس تنفيذي لشركة The Brand Company وأخصائي تطوير إدارة leadership coaching.
I have an interesting question for you, صراحة. If I didn't know you and you were to introduce yourself to me in a pivotal story, what story would you share with me?
That's an interesting and difficult question.
Yeah.
It depends on the context of when I'm meeting you and why I'm meeting you and how I'm meeting you. And
Let's say at a networking event.
what might be interesting. So a networking event, most likely I won't be there. I don't like networking events in general.
طيب.
I'm not good at that. But I think there's a lot of stories about me that I think I find interesting and would hope that I'd find someone that would also find them interesting as well.
طب تعالى go on.
لا, go ahead.
Sorry about that.
No.
Actually, one idea came to mind. If you were to introduce yourself to me through a piece of advice you received from your dad, what would you say?
Oh, wow. My father was an academic for most of his life. And one of the things that I learned from watching him was the importance of discipline and routine. It was never something that he instilled in me through lectures or through telling me what to do, but watching him. Extremely disciplined, extremely almost predictable in terms of how he used routine to drive his life. And to the point when he was living in the United States, I was living in Egypt. This was in the 80s and 90s. There wasn't a lot of, mostly in the 80s, there wasn't a lot of communication. If I had to call him, I'd call him on a landline somewhere. And I always knew exactly where to reach him. So I knew when he'd be at the office, when he'd be at home, when he'd be on his lunch break, when he'd be just arriving back from the office, he's at home, he's in the mood to talk. And it was that kind of, so definitely the discipline and routine that I observed in him was an important lesson, I'd say. I'm not sure I picked it up as well as I might have, but definitely learned that lesson from him.
But would you say that you have a predictable life دلوقتي?
Absolutely not.
How come?
I think there are certain things about it that are predictable, certain things that I try to maintain routine, but I thrive on really finding new challenges to face every day. And it's not planned, it's not intentional, it's not محتاج حاجة جديدة النهاردة تعالى نعمل حاجة مختلفة. That's just the way the work that I have chosen to do in my life has always been.
تعرف انت الكاركتر بتاعك دايما strikes me as somebody who is a representation of what classic rock is and a little bit of, this is gonna sound weird, house music.
Interesting.
في حتة فيك كده بحسها ان انت بتعرف to blend your roots with what's happening in the world today and what's coming. How accurate is this?
So I think it's really accurate. I wouldn't necessarily choose those two genres of music. So first of all, I love musical analogies. So if we're going to play that game, we can have a lot of fun with it.
Let's do that.
But I grew up with a very interesting exposure to Arabic music. الموسيقى بتاعتنا it touches me very much لغاية النهاردة. When I listen to عود قانون the old classics and أول أم كلثوم عبد الحليم حافظ, all of this, it really moves me in a way that I think is really significant. And at the same time, I grew up listening to classic rock. I was a child of the 80s. I was in a rock band. But that was something that to me was also very much part of my upbringing. Over the years, from a musical perspective, I think I've developed a pretty wide palette for musical genre, and I think it comes basically from a big part of who I am is as a what we call a third culture kid.
Are you?
Absolutely, of course.
How?
Well, I was born in the U.S. I grew up in Egypt. I went to an American school. I'm actually يعني, among the cohorts. I think the original research on third culture kids was done on like our group or people in our, because we were very much in that space where we were bridging different cultures.
But how does that affect you as somebody who's living here right now? And TCKs, their identity is distorted.
I would say my identity is definitely distorted. يعني ما فيش شك إن في خلل في الموضوع to a large extent, and maybe that's something that I've never thought about. I've never thought about it as being distorted. بس here we are قاعدين في مصر نتكلم إنجليزي ليه؟ ودايما عندنا القصة دي إحنا ليه بنتكلم إنجليزي أصلا؟ مش كده؟ بس here we are. I always make it a point if I'm working to stay connected both to the locale where I'm working, but also to keep my mind, connected to what's happening around the world in my field.
What's happening in the world that's keeping you busy and up at night? Yes.
Yeah. A lot.
Yeah.
A lot. Doesn't keep me up at night anymore because I've really tried to manage that. بس أي حد, anyone that's lived with us through observing what happened in Gaza over the past couple of years, and it's still happening, by the way. It's not on the news as much, it's not on our feeds as much, but I think anyone that didn't lose sleep over that needs to question their humanity.
100%.
And I think technology keeps me up at night, how it's affecting our lives. Everything from just our phones and the screens that we're constantly glued to AI.
Yeah.
Like what's going on with that.
Speaking of staying up at night, there was a point where you talked about stepping down from your role as a CEO at Archimedia. And that seemed to have different factors. Maybe واحدة منهم burnout. As أعرف وصلنا للحظة اللي أنت قلت I'm burnt out, this is it, I think I need to make that decision. What was going on through your mind?
Oh, I remember that day very, very specifically. So just for people that don't know, Archimedia is a technology business, right? And it deals with, or it dealt with at the time, لغاية النهاردة, the concept of basically technology for the home. Obviously, we did offices, we did a lot of work, but it was all about using technology in a lifestyle context. Right, so how do you automate your home? How do you create a room where you can watch movies, listen to music at an optimum level? It was very, very interesting, and it was actually I think way ahead of its time, which was part of the problem, right? And a lot of the technology that we're using was not yet developed enough, right? Today, the things that seem to be very easy and we take them for granted, at the time were very challenging, and after a while, it got very frustrating. And it made me take a step back and say, is this really what I want to be doing for the rest of my life? The answer to that was no. I'm still a partner in the business. It's a fantastic business. It's run by very, very talented people who have a passion for it. I help them a lot with the things that I can help them with. But I'm not involved day to day. I don't have to deal with the challenges of that business. But it was, 2014, I think, or 2013. And it was the summer. It was my son's birthday. I was in London.
Wow.
We were having brunch for my son's birthday, and I got a call from a very unhappy client whose remote control hadn't been working for some reason. And it wasn't even like it was a client who we did a home for him, but he wasn't at home. He was actually on his yacht in Croatia, and we had nothing to do with his yacht. But he just figured something isn't working. I need to call Omar because he's the. And that was just, for me, that was like it. I was kind of done.
How do you know when you're burnt out?
How do you know when you're burnt out? When I think one of the signs is when you find going to work in the morning really challenging. When you try to think of all the different reasons why you don't have to go to work, not feeling so well, I don't have too much to do النهارده, I can make up some excuses. When you find yourself really thinking hard about that, you're probably done.
ايه الفرق ما بين واحد burnt out وواحد who lost passion؟
I think they're connected, right? I think the idea of burning out wouldn't happen if you're passionate about what you're doing, right? If you're passionate about what you're doing, you're going to work, 23 hours a day, and you're going to be very happy doing it because you're following your passion, because you love your work, right? Or you've learned to love it. It's not necessarily this was something that you were passionate about when you started off. But you've developed a passion for what you do for whatever reason.
It's bringing up a subject that a lot of people are talking about اللي هي طب هو موضوع ال work life balance ده ايه بقى خرافة ولا is it a reality ولا ايه؟ يعني أنا النهارده لما أكون passionate بس I'm working very long hours طب فين ال work life balance؟ Is it really that important أصلا؟
What does that mean? What does work life balance mean to you?
أنا بالنسبة لي work life balance معناها إن هي actually I would replace the word balance هي مش توازن هي تناسب. انا بالنسبه لي هي تناسب. بالانس دي بحسها بتاعت زمان قوي خلاص. يعني انا النهارده مثلا I might be working in a government job. I clock in at a certain time. I clock in maybe at 2 p.m. 3 p.m. I have balance. I go back home to my family. That's good. It works for people. بس ما اقدرش اجي اقول النهارده somebody is burnt out و lacks passion واقول له فين ال work life balance بتاعك.
I think work life balance is one of the myths that we try to either convince ourselves or sell to our kids, or it depends on what you want to achieve in life. بصراحة. I think there's a big contextual element here, right? But if you want to have great impact in some way, if you have a purpose that is driving you, taking time away from that to do other things is that smart? And then it's also when in life are you talking about this? Like if you're, I had a conversation with my son a couple of years ago, and he's very, very driven, very, very intelligent. He's a wonderful young man. This was the older one. The younger one is amazing. He's intelligent. He's very smart. He's very connected to himself and to his emotions. And he finds his own balance. He never has this challenge of, do I need to? He knows. The older one is kind of driven in a more traditional way. He wants to achieve. He wants to shine. He's academically very smart. And we had this conversation about when he was looking at opportunities after he finished university, and he said, "I'm trying to find a certain amount of work-life balance, in what I do." And I said, "That's kind of not the smart thing to do right now." Because if you try to find work-life balance when you're 23, 24, 25, right, you're going to be working until you're 70, right? But if you work really hard, in something that you love, something that you're passionate, something that you're good at for the next 15, 20 years of your life, then you'll be able to have the balance that you want.
How old is your son?
He's 24.
He's 24.
Turns 24 in March. The older one. The younger one is 20, and I'm really blessed that I have two wonderful boys who are very different and each remarkable in their own way.
What inspires you about either of them or both of them?
Oh, wow. I learned a lot from both of them. And I think when you are able to kind of internalize the idea that you can learn from your kids, it's a wonderful moment.
That's very true.
Zain is the younger one. He is extremely thoughtful, very quiet, and he just inspires me with his wisdom for his age. He's so wise, and he's so fun to be around. He's funny, extremely funny, and he's just remarkable to have conversations with. If you touch on a topic that interests him, he's so interesting to talk to. He's so, just engaging. And, but he also has the mastery of silence, which by the way is really underrated, right? I was watching something the other day. It said there's a great Arab proverb, and it said it's wonderful to know the truth and to speak it. It's also wonderful to know the truth and to speak of palm trees.
Ooh.
I love that. Like just because you know something, you don't have to talk about it, right? So that internal, kind of strength and control I love from him. Saif is a lot. His energy is a lot more external, so he's a lot more talkative. He's a lot more engaging, and he's also funny in a different way. We always have conversations around which sense of humor wins, but so but he's very ambitious, very smart, also very charming, and I love about Saif that he will enter a space and he will make a connection with everybody in the room, irrespective of what they're doing there.
He sounds
right?
charismatic.
Charismatic is an interesting word. I would definitely say he's charismatic in the traditional sense. He leaves an impression wherever he goes. Both of them do, actually. Saif will make the effort to have a conversation with everybody that's in the room, and he will remember their names and their stories, and he'll connect with them. And he has an amazing, talking about networking event, like he's remarkable at that, and it comes very effortlessly for him.
Wow.
So yeah, so that's, but they're I'm very proud of both of them.
Now, before we go into the business side, I أسألك حاجة. How are both your children a reflection of your passion and purpose in life دلوقتي?
I don't think they are. I mean, I wouldn't expect them to be. I expect them to be reflections of their own passion and purpose in life. I've never... Okay, I was about to lie. I've never pushed them to do certain things. I have always, I think, given them a lot of leeway and flexibility to choose their own path. I've never been fussed about, that they have to do something or other. If you're going to do something, do it well, right? I'm a big believer in that. If you want to be, something, be good at that something. Just you put in the effort and the time and the commitment to doing it.
Wow.
Yeah.
We'll revisit that somehow, some way بعدين. I have a feeling we will.
مع بعض.
سأسألك على لحظة معينة كده, a specific moment. فاكر أنت بعد ما you stepped down, and then you did some freelancing work شوية.
How do you know all this, by the way?
I mean, you're Omar.
We've had these conversations before? Is it
No.
okay? Oh, no? Oh.
No.
Oh, all right.
Let's just say you're a pretty public person.
Oh, okay. So this stuff, it's online somewhere?
Yes, it is.
Excellent. All right. I'm glad to know that. All right.
When you were freelancing for a certain period of time, you decided that you're going to start the brand code, or what it is today. Take us to that moment لما أنت you found the issue, the thought process that you had, and then the decision that you said, you know what, I'm going to start a company, AL Brand Co.
Wow. So the brand company is an interesting story, and it's one of those things in my life. Another thing in my life that is very serendipitous, right? So many of the things that happen in our lives that matter happen by chance. At least for me, I think it's quite common. So I've had an obsession with the concept of brands and brand building forever, literally since 1997. I remember in 2007, I got an email from Amazon that said, "Congratulations, you've been a customer for 20 years." And I was like, 20 years? When did they start? Sorry, 2017. So I found that to be really interesting. So I went on my history to see what was I buying in 1997. And my Amazon history had, all they sold at the time was books, right? So I was buying a lot of books. And they were all books on branding and strategy and brand building. And like I had so much interest in that, discipline, in the idea of that from the very beginning. And there was one book about the Spice Girls, because my little cousin was a fan of the Spice Girls, so I bought her that was the one book people always see why. But so I had this passion about it, and I in all the jobs that I did, I always had an eye on that, right? How do we show up in a way that conveys the value that we're adding, in a way that people understand what we're all about, in a way that people want to work with us.
That's what branding means to you? That's
part of it. Yeah, definitely showing up, having companies show up with authenticity and presence and purpose, that is really kind of what it's all about. and it's an aggregate, right? It's not just one thing. So it's an aggregate of all the different emotions and associations that you evoke through, someone hearing your name or seeing your logo or entering your space.
Hello,
Right?
Avi.
Yeah.
So what happened that had you say, you know what, it's time for me to create this company?
It was an interesting story. I was consulting for a bit, and I was actually working for a Saudi company, and we were in the process of branding one of our projects here in Egypt. And I was looking for a company to work with, and I got very frustrated, to be very honest with you, although there are really great companies out there that are very, very talented. But at that moment in time, I just was very frustrated. And I had met DNA, Ahmed Amr, Dora Abdel Hadi. Dora's still my partner now. Ahmed exited a few years ago. But I met them. They had a very, very, very interesting smaller company called DNA that focused really on the graphic side of branding, logo mark design, visual identity, and they were super talented and they're very, very, very good at it. And that was the trigger. So I met them, we were working on a project, and I got very frustrated. And I said, why don't we build something that would be the company that we kind of wanted to be the client of? And that was my thinking is in all the time I spent leading companies and founding companies and building businesses, we created the brand company to kind of be that company that I would have liked to have, next to me in that process.
Nice.
It's very easy to find people to draw pretty pictures, right? It's easy to find people to create catchy advertising, right? But to have someone that's really with you shoulder to shoulder in the thought process of what does it mean to build a strong brand, everything from the meaning of the brand to, the attitude, how does the brand show up, to the promise of the brand, right? The experience of the brand, what does it deliver? And then that developed more through my coaching work, obviously, into, well, if the system isn't working, it doesn't matter what kind of ad you're going to run or what kind of logo you're going to design, it's not going to solve your problem, right? So it became even more connected to the system and the culture and what's happening inside the organization and within the leadership team.
Do you remember your first ever client with the brand co?
Our first ever client, I actually don't. I know some of the early ones that we worked with early on that were very significant. I remember when we worked with Sodic at the beginning, and I have a history with Sodic because I consulted for them when they first launched their project Alegria, and they rebranded it into Sodic from Seds bin October. So we worked with them, and that was a wonderful experience. We worked with Amar at the very beginning. We worked with El Guna. So the landing those accounts was very significant. At the time, we did a lot of real estate work, and then we worked with EFG. So there was a time we took on a number of big corporate accounts, and this was actually a lot of them did the work during COVID. They kind of understood that this was a great time for them to, power back in and redesign their brand strategy and their branding while things were a bit slow. Some of them it was intentional, some of them it just happened. But yeah, it was very exciting to land a few of those big clients. We worked with the government of Ras Al Khaimah in the Emirates from the very beginning. That was a very big project for us, and we worked with some wonderful people.
So how
over
did you
there.
land all these clients? MashaAllah, these are very big names.
We went out there and knocked on doors and talked to people, and we very quickly were able to build a reputation because we filled the gap that was very glaringly visible to people. The gap was that we didn't just work on designing logos, right? We worked on building brand strategies, looking at brand architecture, digging deeper into kind of the fundamentals of what's we always ask the question, like, really, what is the problem that we're solving here? Why is it that you're here as a client?
Sorry to cut you off, but I'm a bit surprised, مش حتى surprised, staggered شوية by the idea إنه a brand like مثلا these big names would still want to work. You know what I mean? When I think about brands, تتكلم مثلا على something that's starting up.
Not necessarily. Not at all.
Bust a myth for me here.
Bust a myth.
Yeah.
So we work on a number of different kind of work streams, and over time we've developed specific offerings that target exactly what clients want to do. So we have something called the brand creation, right? Brand creation is just that. Is where I'm starting off from scratch. I have a new, idea. I kind of think what it's going to look like, but I'm not really sure. Build a brand for me. And that's been a really fun experience for us, where we start with a blank piece of paper with the client and we just conceptualize the whole thing from the beginning with them. So that's one track. The second one is what we call brand elevation. And that involves just kind of dialing back in and figuring out, okay, what we have right now isn't really representing who we are and definitely not representing who we want to be in the future, right? It can be outdated, it can be old, we have a lot of work that involves generational transition, right? So family businesses transitioning from one generation to the other. الجيل الجديد عايز يحط بصمته بطريقة معينة، شايف المستقبل بطريقة مختلفة. So we do a lot of that work. So that's brand elevation, and we've done a lot of that, and a lot of it was very challenging work, right? Some of it involved big names with a lot of emotional connection, right? So when we did the rebranding, both visually and conceptually, we really had to be careful with it, and we've become really good at that. The third thing we call brand transformation. And that's when you really want to kind of take a brand and transform it, not just from the outside, but also from the inside. So that involves culture work. It involves, sometimes it involves systemic team coaching work. That's a bit more involved. But yeah, so those are the three things. And old companies, new companies, everybody always needs to be paying attention to their brand.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
طبعا عندي سؤال لك.
طب ممكن اشرب ميه ولا؟
عايز تشرب خد راحتك. There's no official way of doing this. So you can step away from the mic, do whatever you want. مش عارف. كتلي بايظ. يعني أنا عندي فضول في حاجة. إيه اللحظة while you were running and growing the brand co
brand company. We don't call it the brand co ever.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Called the brand. No, that's okay. It's we're in the branding business, so the name of the company is actually really important.
The brand company. صح?
Thanks.
Got it right?
Got it right.
حلو قوي. At what point did you realize the Omar that I am today is not going to take the brand company to the future?
At what point did I realize that? What does that mean?
أنا
when
الكاركتر بتاعي النهارده.
How do you know I realized that?
معرفش يمكن لحظه حصلت مثلا خلتك ان انت توصل لريلايزيشن على فكره لازم بقى اتغير شويه. ده الاسلوب ده مش نافع خلاص.
اسئلتك كلها معقده جدا على فكره.
انا عارف انا انسان معقد اصلا.
معقد جدا. لا ما اظنش. So هقول لك القصه دي على حاجتين. So there are certain approaches to my leadership that have evolved over the years. Some of them have evolved, some of them have been drastically changed. Anyone that worked with me in 2014, 2013, 2010, 2000, 1990, I've been working for a long time, probably wouldn't recognize me today, right? And a lot of it has been the humility that comes with experience. A lot of it has been work that I've done on myself, I think, through the coaching world, and that's been had a big impact. So there are certain things about how I lead that I think have changed over the years, but there are also certain things that I know that I can't do, and I know that for any business that I'm involved in, to take the next step, it's going to need to involve other people.
طب أنا عندي a zoomed in question about that actually. يعني حاجة أنا واخد note of it. That's something that you talked about.
Talked about where? Where are you reading this stuff?
Articles, podcasts, appearances.
Okay.
في واحد منهم you said being the boss isn't what leadership is about. So what is it about really?
Wow. So yeah, being the boss is definitely not what leadership is about. Leading in a way that people choose you as the boss is a different discussion, right? That's a different. That can be an outcome, but it's not the end goal, and it's definitely not the purpose of leadership. I think, and this is something that I remember. One of the biggest compliments I ever received in my career. I used to work for the Mansour Group ages ago, and what a wonderful organization and a wonderful family to work with. And at the time, the chairman Yusuf Mansour. Who is until this day a massive inspiration for me and just such a big part of my life. And at one point he said, either to me or in a meeting or to someone, that my biggest talent was developing others. And I thought that was such a massive compliment, right? Because that, as a leader, that's where your leverage is, right? And that's what most leaders don't understand, I think. And your high leverage move as a leader is getting others to want to do what needs to be done, right? Like, that's the idea. So developing others, guiding others, coaching others, hopefully inspiring others, I think that's what leadership's about. I don't think it's about being the boss at all. But there are times when if you want to say, there are times when the buck stops with you, right?
بالظبط.
You need to make the call. At the end of the day, you're accountable to someone, either to yourself or to your board or your shareholders or to a client. You're accountable. So you're going to have to make the call sometimes. And that call sometimes doesn't necessarily involve democracy, right? You don't need to vote on it.
It's a style.
But you want to listen to others and make sure that you have people in the room that are smarter than you, that you listen to, and then, you have to make the call.
بقول لك ايه؟ here's an interesting question. ايه رايك في فكره النهارده the latest generation مثلا Gen Z Gen Alpha بيقول لك انا ما بحبش كلمه boss، ما بحبش ان انا يكون عندي somebody above me. And how does that apply to your definition of developing people?
مش عارف الجيل ده عايز ايه بالظبط يعني and I say that and I'm serious مش قصدي حاجة and I say that also يعني within the context of the fact that I think at the brand company at least a third of our team is Gen Z and they are all extremely hardworking, extremely intelligent, extremely creative, very disciplined, they're fun. True. I have generally, I can't say I have any issues with the generation, but I don't know what that means. I think what it means is that maybe they just want to be involved in decision making. They don't want to be told what to do. They want to have agency. They want to be able to take risks, to think. I think that's what they mean. Not having a boss, there are certain contexts where you don't have a boss, right? But I think it's also what does boss mean? Does boss mean that someone's accountable for my work, right? Someone's accountable for teaching me and guiding me and coaching me and is that what boss means, or do they mean boss in a more of a negative? In a negative sense. مش عايز حد يتأمر عليا يعني.
بالظبط.
You know what I mean? Which على فكرة ما حدش فينا عايز حد يتأمر عليه يعني.
But it happens.
Well, I think this is what leadership development and a lot of the work that we do in coaching, that's what this is about, right? Is how can you become a leader who people want to work with or work for, whatever you want to call it, right?
Okay.
صح.
أنا معاك في الحتة دي. هي أنا بالنسبة لي بس هو how do I meet this generation where they're at. وانت I think you touched on it اللي هو عايز نوع من الاوتونومي. شوية حرية في الفكر، حرية في الكرياتيفيتي، تديله مساحة ان هو يقدم فكرة و take a few steps forward. Let's see where that goes, right? انا بشوف النهارده ان this is not happening. يعني في حتة في الجنريشن اللي قبله مثلا يقول لك I'm not sure, I'm not ready to see some mistakes. انا مش فاهم. فهواجه السؤال ليك بقى، انت مثلا as somebody who built a company with Gen Z around you, what has been the benefit of leading them their way? اللي هي give them some autonomy, خليه يعبر عن نفسه، الكلام ده كله. What has been the benefit?
I mean, the benefit is you can ask the question in both ways. What would be the cost of not, right? And
بتحب السؤال ده قوي by the way.
Yeah.
بتحبه قوي.
Because it gets you to think. I think about, the question from a different perspective. But then, since you're the one asking the questions today, I'll answer your question. You get the benefit is their creativity, right? They come up with amazing ideas. If you give them some freedom and you give them respect and they feel it's genuine, by the way, because you can't certain things that you cannot fake, and this generation will catch you. If you're faking it, they will catch you. They are very smart, very intuitive. despite the fact that they grew up, texting and not having a lot of interaction with humans, they
100%.
they learn pretty quickly. But if you give them, I think, the freedom and the autonomy and let them take risks, they'll surprise you. We always have this tension as leaders, and every company you work with, every client you talk to will tell you that they want innovation, right? One of our values is innovation. Great, prove that to me. So, and when you ask them to prove it, it's very difficult for them to prove, right? Because the cost of innovation is a cost they're not willing to pay, right? They don't want to take a risk, because if they take a risk, they might fail. So as a result, they don't take a risk, so they don't innovate. So everyone's doing the same thing everyone else is doing, which makes zero sense. This is something that we see all the time with our clients, right? Everybody comes into the room wanting to hear or see something that looks like everybody else. I don't understand that. Why not do something different and perhaps fail, or perhaps succeed wildly? But you're playing your odds. If you talk to a CFO, if you talk to a CEO, and you tell him, okay, would you rather lose, $1 million, or potentially make $50 million, right?
Good question. I see
They'll never take that risk, right? They'll say, I can't lose $1 million, but if you might lose $1 million, or you might actually make 50 or 20 or whatever. But no.
ما هو ده where I'm curious. يعني مثلا هنا في مصر, a lot of companies talk about branding. كتير قوي. It's so important, right? But somehow something's not working.
Because they don't understand what they mean when they say branding. A lot of the times when we have a new client that comes to talk to us at the brand company, we have to first sit down and tell them, okay, what do you mean? Right? What would you like to exist a year from now that doesn't exist today for this to be an amazing experience for you?
Right? I have a feeling, Omar, just this question is very big for them. It's a huge question.
Well, but it's important to define that, because a lot of times there's a checklist somewhere that somebody found in a desk that says rebrand, or new branding project, or new brand strategy, or so before we start working on that. And by the way, a lot of these terms are very, very vague, right? So we have to understand before we embark on an engagement with a client, what is it exactly they want? Do they want a fresh coat of paint? Because a fresh coat of paint is easy, right? Sometimes that's what they want, right? Or do they really want to rebuild? I talk a lot about renters and owners, the distinction between renters and owners. When you rent a home, you go in, you put some, whatever, HDF on the floors with shwayed zara, you put some plants, and you paint the walls and some nice curtains, right? And you're done. Nice furniture. It's a trip to IKEA, right? But if you own the home, you want to make sure your foundation is solid, your plumbing, your electrical, everything's working the way it should, and will continue to work into the future. So we always like to understand from a client when they come in, what are you doing? Are you renting or owning? Is this something that will last, for the next 10, 15 years, or do you need a quick fix? Because we can do quick fixes, but it's not why we're around. There's a lot of companies out there that can do quick fixes probably faster and cheaper than we do.
It's amazing how you're drawing a subtle parallel between how you look at branding and how you look at leadership development.
Those two things to me today are so strongly connected.
Say more.
Well, I was always very confused. I'm living in these two different worlds, but they are very connected. And it all came to light when I did a lot of systemic work with Orsk.
Can you just elaborate for the viewers?
So Orsk is all about relationship systems coaching, or relationship systems intelligence, or systems inspired coaching, they call it. It's basically where you are working on coaching a team, but not as individuals, but you're coaching the team as a team, or a system as a system.
Yeah, it's almost like coaching one person with multiple heads. صح؟
Right. Or multiple people who
one
ultimately create one third entity.
Sure.
Right. So that is the essence of it. And you're really coaching the relationship versus coaching the people in the relationship.
Right.
In any case, and I was having this conversation one time with Cecil Murray, who runs CRR Africa. And I was telling him about this confusion that I have, between my two worlds. And he laughed. And he said something that I've remembered until this day. And he said it with such, spontaneity. He said, but of course, a brand is nothing more than the manifestation of the relationship system that creates it.
Wow.
Right? I was like, bam.
That is so true.
And it's so true. And since then, I mean, even from before that, but more so since he said that, that's how I approach this, right? When there's a team in the room, ultimately, whatever comes out of that team will be a manifestation of their relationship, right? So when you have teams that are misaligned, we have to work first on aligning the team before we can begin to work on a brand strategy. Because now we understand that if that team is misaligned and we build a strategy out of misalignment, they're gonna fly off the rails within 6 months to a year because they're gonna be, wait a minute. So we've actually had situations where we've taken a team out of the brand strategy exercise completely, put them into a team coaching exercise to align the team first.
That is so cool.
And then we bring them back to, okay, now you're ready to have the conversation around your brand. And it's life-changing for them. We don't have the luxury of that with everybody, but our workshops, for example, if you attend our workshops, they're always a little bit of both. A little bit of, let's talk about the technical parts of branding, your vision, your values, your purpose, your essence, the positioning, all the stuff that you'd normally see. But we also talk about the relationship and the tension and the misalignment that we sometimes sense in a room. It's very interesting.
طب انا عندي كده kind of it looks like a left turn but it's not. انت بتتكلم على how leadership supports branding. تمام? You with me?
I'm with you.
Okay. How can branding support leadership? And I'll give you context what I mean by that. Now that أنا مثلا in corporate and organizations, the higher I rank, the more my brand matters. My reputation matters. It's not about the technical expertise that you have. It's about who you are. It's what you stand for and what impact you've done and how you talk to stakeholders, whoever. بتضحك لي.
No.
Oh, you're smiling.
I love the question.
Right. So لو احنا قلبناها بقى ازاي branding ممكن يساعدني انا في الليدرشيب بتاعتي especially وانا في الكارير بتاعي.
Yeah. So I developed something at a point in time, probably during COVID, that I called the triad of resilience. And it was basically the triad of resilience is, imagine a Venn diagram that captures the intersection of leadership, brand, and culture. Okay, and the premise was that those three things, if you have competent leadership that develops a strong culture and builds a strong brand, you will be much more resilient than companies who don't do that.
Wow.
Okay.
Makes sense.
And they're all connected, as you said, right? So, you need the leadership to create the culture, right? And the brand, whether we like it or not, emanates from that culture, right? And you see that in companies all the time, right? At the end of the day, your culture is going to betray you, right? The delivery guy, when they get to your door, how that delivery guy behaves at the end of the day will represent your impression of that brand. صح. And you can يعني تقيس دي بقى على حاجات كتير يعني. So there's a reinforcing element there, right? Because, and also when you talk about strong brand, so what does a strong brand do? And we always talk about this again with our clients. A strong brand needs to provide you with three key things. It needs to provide you with customers. It needs to provide you with capital. And it needs to provide you with talent. So it's going to impact all three of those things, right? If you're looking for investors, your brand is going to attract the right investors to you. If you're looking for talent, your brand's going to invite and is going to attract the right talent towards you. And ultimately, or of course, it needs to attract the right customers, the right buyers. So we need to look at brand from that perspective. How does that impact leadership? Massive, right? How does leadership impact that? Also massive. So it is a cycle. These three things, they reinforce each other.
If you were to give a tip to مثلا the coming generations who are working in your company and other companies on how they can best develop their leadership abilities, what would you say?
That's a good one. I think what I have really been aware of over the past probably 15 years of my life is, first of all, how unimportant it is that you say everything that you think, and how unimportant it is that you have the answer to every question. Because we grew up like that. Like, we grew up in class, you want to be the first person to raise your hand to answer the question, right? That's how we grew up. Sah? And you want to have the right answer. And you want to speak up in every meeting. And you want to give your opinion on every single thing. And you know what? That's probably not the best way, right, to develop your leadership, right? It's not the best way even to develop what they call your presence, your executive presence. And this is always really interesting, because when you sit in a meeting and you see there's one person that's talking all the time, monopolizing the conversation, blah, 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 and people are kind of getting tired of listening to them, but they're and then there's one person that doesn't speak very often, but the minute they open their mouth, everybody wants to hear what they say.
Yeah, it's like heads turn.
Right? Let's see and that is an amazing skill, by the way, right? Speak less, speak last, right? That's an easy one. And I think asking the right questions is infinitely more important than having the right answers in every context. In every context. Fall in love with the problem you're solving, not the solution to the problem.
You just gave a talk about that recently, Sah?
I did indeed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hello.
I did. How are you keeping up with all this? Like, what do you...
This is what we do for our guests. We love our guests.
I love it, yes.
But Omar, to land this plane killer together, I want to ask you an interesting question for me, and then something for the audience. That question, if I was to take one habit from your life or work and apply it to my life for 30 days, what is that habit, and how would it benefit my life?
So I think I want to say reading, but it's not really reading anymore, because some of it is reading, some of it is listening, but somehow absorbing content is something that I do every single day for at least half an hour. I'm going to read a book, I'm going to listen to an audiobook, I'm going to listen to a podcast, I'm going to watch something on YouTube by someone that inspires me or that I'm interested in every single day. I've probably done that for a big part of the past 15 years.
A full book, cover to cover?
Every day? No.
Every week, every month?
I've never read a full book in a day.
So like chapters?
I'll read a chapter. To finish a book, it'll take me a week if it's a really good one.
MashaAllah.
إذا كتير ولا قليل?
That's amazing.
I mean, never less than a week. Sorry. I'm not a fast reader at all. I like to read, and I will reread things, because I realize that sometimes your mind wanders as you're reading. You're like, oh shit, I have to go back and reread that. But reading and listening to, smart people, and the smart people aren't necessarily the people that are the most popular, or the ones that are most prominent, or that are the ones that are speaking a lot. This is always tricky, right? Because sometimes you have to find the people who are really worth listening to.
Love that.
Yeah.
So the final segment for today is حاجة اسمها the curtain call. Do you know what that is?
No idea.
Curtain call is the moment in theater where all the actors come, they hold hands.
I know what it is in theater. I mean, what is it? What is it here? I know what a curtain call is in general.
We're celebrating different parts of you through certain questions.
Interesting.
Okay. So typically it's 3 questions. For you, I feel compelled to add maybe 1 or 2.
Do whatever you want.
First question would be, if I was to go...
We're good on time,
we're
by the
good.
way. Yeah.
We're wrapping up. If I was to go to your parents today and ask them, what do you know about Omar that deserves to be seen to the world, but he doesn't reveal? What did they say?
My parents. Interesting. So first of all, my mother, Allah yarhamha, yani, she's passed away a number of years ago. She would have a very different answer than my father. And I'm not sure I'd want to share her answer. Aslan, you know, she'd have some scandalous thing to say about me. I don't know. That's an interesting. So I think you know, my inner child is very, I think, very visible. Very, like, people that know me, he's there. Like,
Okay.
yeah, I'm very, you know, a lot of times I will, you know, I'll make light of things sometimes when it's not appropriate, but I use humor a lot. I think growing up, I probably used humor a lot to cope with certain things. And my mom and I used to really, we used to have a lot of fun with that. She was also very funny, and so I don't know. Maybe it's a sense of humor. Maybe it's I had a tendency, I think, growing up to also. I always had like a kind of we'll figure it out attitude. Like, I didn't really think things through. I probably didn't think many things in my life through for a big part of my youth and adolescence. Like, I kind of went with the flow and made decisions probably from a bit of an emotional place, versus like really thinking it. And when I think back at some of my friends who at the time were very driven, very focused, and they knew exactly what they were doing, you know, I was kind of like, yeah, okay, now I get it.
Okay.
I don't know what my father would say. I'd be very curious to know what my father would say, by the way. I don't know.
No, you left us very curious right now.
Yeah, we'll have to. Maybe he'll come on your show.
I would love to. I'd be honored.
Yeah.
طيب, if you had a 1-minute phone call with your 20-year-old self, what would you tell him?
Oh, it wouldn't need to be 20 minutes. It wouldn't need to be a 1-minute call. I think it would need to be like maybe 15 seconds. And I would just, you know, I'd pay attention. Pay attention. I was so distracted in my 20s. A lot of things were happening around me that I probably should have been paying attention to that I didn't. And I think pay attention. Not even 15 seconds.
What would he say?
That would be the call. Like, just pay attention. What would he say? He'd probably be like, "Pay attention to what, man? What are you talking about? You know, what do you want? Like, I'm busy right now. You know." But yeah, just pay attention and work hard. I think hard work is something that definitely, I think, if I had, you know, I could have picked up earlier in my life. It's funny because I've probably worked harder in the second half of my career than I did in the first. Well, no, that's not true. No, I worked pretty hard as well. I worked pretty hard as well in the beginning. But yeah, just pay attention.
Okay. Who do you hope watches this conversation? And what do you want them to do with the insights from our conversation today?
Wow. Well, I hope we've shared some insights. But I hope my boys watch it or listen to it, depending. I hope that somebody out there listens to us and makes a change, makes some kind of a change. And I think one of the things that I have also come to recognize is that if you can find that one micro shift, right, that high leverage, high impact micro shift, it can be life changing for you and the people around you. And it can be such a small thing. It can be waking up a little bit earlier every day and doing something, you know, meaningful. It can be, you know, tuning into your own spirituality. It can be asking more questions. It can be, you know, learning a new skill. It can be something that isn't necessarily earth-shattering, but it can be really impactful. So I'd love for someone out there to listen to us and maybe find something that we've said interesting and inspiring to get them to identify one thing they can do in their life that could really make an impact and change.
Last one. What is the hardest truth you've had to accept, and how did it shape who you are today?
The hardest truth I've had to accept. I think the truth of my own limitations has been something that has been hard to accept. I realize that there are just certain capabilities that I maybe don't have. I try to learn what I can, but I think ultimately I realize that I don't have the propensity to be very good at everything. So I've had to come to terms with that. Some things are pretty, some things are pretty important as well. I wish I was better at math. I'm not very good at math. Not many people know that, by the way. But I'm not very good at math. I mean serious math. I mean, I can, I can read a P&L and I know what business math is all about. But I wish my mathematical skills were better. I don't know if it's a hard truth, but and I think the reality of these days now, I just turned 57 last year. I think the reality of time passing is something that I don't know if I'm fully, my relationship with that is still something I'm working on. My relationship with time passing, my relationship with mortality. But I don't know if they're hard truths, but they're definitely truths.
Omar, this has been a pleasure. Truly appreciate your time. My biggest takeaway from our time together today, قد ايه انت اللعبة عندك هي الانترنال brand. It's a very, very big piece to who you are.
Now I'm intrigued to know what that means. But
tune in for part 2.
Part 2. Khaled, thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Habibi Omar, thank you. Awesome. Yes.